Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican Congressman Rep Kinzinger of Illinois, Noah Rothman, Elise Jordan, Mark Leibovich back with us as well. Congressman, good to have you with us here in New York.
Thanks, good to be here.
So I was kind of watching you watch the president there when he talked about take the guns first, have due process second. What's your reaction to that comment?
Well, if you take that at its face, it's obviously a little frightening, but if you look at what I think the president was intending, the idea of this kind of gun violence restraining order, this idea that if somebody shows mental health concerns or issues, you can restrict their ability to have a gun while it's adjudicated. So I think that's what he meant. But yeah, I would have probably said it a little differently.
So there are some proposals he put out there yesterday that shocked a lot of Republicans, delighted a lot of Democrats. I wonder how many of them you agree with. Raising the federal age to buy a firearm to 21. What do you think?
I think definitely for the AR-15 it should be 21.
For the AR-15?
Yeah. Now, I'm open to the question of shotguns and things because I think there's plenty of reason to have a shotgun for hunting and everything else. The AR-15 is a guy that actually owns one and has carried the version of that in Iraq. Making that 21 makes sense to me. And if you look at, frankly, the last 3 mass shootings, there are 3 things that would have mitigated or stopped each of those. Number 1, banning of the bump stocks, which I think is a no-brainer, frankly. That would have mitigated, not necessarily stopped, but mitigated Vegas. Raising the age to 21 and fixing the background check system. Both would have fixed Texas and Florida. If you fix that, this guy might have been flagged in Florida, but at least if it was 21, again, you mitigate. Maybe he'd have gotten some other guns, but it's helpful.
So when you talk about expanding background checks, are you saying that private sales should be subject to background checks in a way they're not today?
So here's my question. The answer in this is going to be in the details. Now, if my dad wants to sell me his pistol, does he have to put me through a federal background check? That's a question. But if there are areas people are buying guns and they're not having background checks, I'm definitely open to
like
closing
a gun
that
show,
out.
for example?
Like a gun show. Now, if you're at a gun show and you're an FFL, you have to put people through background checks anyway. So it's not like you go to a gun show and it's just kind of a massive free-for-all.
Right.
So talking about the bump stock, you favor going down the regulatory path.
Yeah.
To banning the bump stock. How is that process going to proceed?
So there were 60 or 70,000 comments. They just closed the comment period where people can write comments or submit comments. There were 70,000 comments that came in on that, and the law says you have to read every one of them. So right now the ATF and the DOJ is reading all of that, and then they'll make their ruling. And my hope is, and I think if the president does an executive order, he may have the power to do this on his own. But the reason the regulatory side is better than just writing a law that says bump stock is because if we get the DOJ to say trigger modification, any trigger modification device violates the spirit of the law, and then when a new device comes onto the market, they can basically assess it like that versus us having to constantly go back and write new legislation.
Congressman, switching gears a little bit, as the ISIS threat recedes in Iraq and Syria, where we currently have a pretty significant deployment, the mission appears to be changing. We are checking great powers engaged in turf wars over there, and we are occasionally engaged in combat with a sovereign power that doesn't want us there. Are you comfortable with the legal authority we have to do combat deployments there?
You know, I am. I'm a big believer in kind of Article 1 or Article 2 power, the power of the president when it comes to issues of making war. I think he is the commander-in-chief. We basically declare a state of war exists or doesn't and give resources to it. As we continue to check ISIS, I think that's under current legal authority. Anything beyond that, we're saying, look, we're going to supply the SDF. We're going to continue to push back against Iranian aggression. I would actually love it if Congress could vote to give authority to the president to do this. But I'll tell you, like when President Obama gave us the authorization for the use of military he wanted, that would have expired by now because it was 3 years and it said no ground troops. And I said, we can't, as Congress, limit what the president can do. That's not our job. And so I'd love to be able to debate this, but everything now, everything, including issues of war, is all political. So whether we can even get it done, I don't know.
Do you support an authorization of military force with respect to Yemen and American operations in Yemen?
I think Yemen still can fall under our counterterrorism narrative. Again, all these, if it comes up and says, hey, let's vote for this, I'd vote for it. I'd vote for whatever is being done and is being done correctly. But I do think this falls under current authority. When you are aggressively going after and going into the war on terror, then I think that the 9/11 AUMF exists for that reason.
I guess I would ask you, sort of stepping back a little bit. I mean, you and like a lot of people this morning on this, and I'm sure other shows have said, the president said this, and that gave me pause, and that was troubling. But I think if you look at what I think he meant and was trying to, we do this seemingly every couple of weeks, right? I mean, is this a problem when the president says something that all of a sudden people are trying to decipher the next day and doesn't speak, or are we just overthinking this?
You know, it would be, for like kind of our jobs, we didn't have to analyze that every time.
Better for our job.
Yeah, but I think, look, I think we know the president's unique. He's unlike any other president prior. He says things. He's actually got, I'll tell you what, I've met with him 3 different times in the Oval Office, or at least in the White House. He has a sense of humor that a lot of times people don't read in his comments. Like, in the way he says things, you realize he's kind of being funny or joking. I don't think that was the case in this gun issue, but you see that a lot, and it's like, I look at it and go, well, I can see his humor in that, but people will take everything literally. You know, they say about politics, if you ever want to take away somebody's sense of humor, just mention you're a congressman, or talk about politics at all, and nobody laughs or smiles. Well, it's nature, it's a serious business.
Joe?
Yeah. Hey, Congressman, let me ask you really quickly, just going down the checklist then. So as far as banning bump stock, support it, but, through a regulatory process, correct?
Well, yeah, I'd vote for it if it came down to legislation, but I think regulatory is good.
Okay,
Yes.
and what about Pat Toomey's background check bill? Do you support the Toomey Mansion plan or something like it?
Truly, I haven't read it all, but yes, I think to the extent we can make sure that the wrong people are not getting guns, that's good. And I think, and let me just say really quickly on this, here's the problem. The left says, let's ban all assault weapons and do everything. Some on the right say, we can't do anything, it's a slippery slope. There are 80% issues, and you're ticking them off right now.
Right. Okay. So, right now, though, it sounds like you support the spirit of what Pat Toomey's at least talking about. Let's talk about assault-style weapons, AR-15s. Would you support either regulating a much more in a much more stringent manner assault-style weapons, or would you ban the purchase of new assault-style weapons?
No, I wouldn't ban it. I own an AR-15. I shoot a lot of rounds through it when I shoot every year. I enjoy doing it. You can trust me with an AR-15. I do think raising the age to 21 makes a lot of sense because, again, in this country, if you can't drink a beer until you're 21 years old, then I think you probably shouldn't be able to buy an AR-15 either.
All right.
All right, Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, appreciate you being here with us.